여러분, 안녕하세요. This will be our last video about conic sections, and today we'll be discussing about hyperbola. Let's have first the objectives. Objective number 1, define a hyperbola. Objective number 2, determine the standard form of equation of a hyperbola. How do we define hyperbola? The hyperbola is the locus of all points in a plane such that the absolute value of the difference of the distances from any point on the hyperbola to the given points in the plane, the foci, is constant. In figure 4.1, given are the 2 points on the axis f sub 1, negative c0, and f sub 2, c0, the foci, both c units away from their midpoint 0, 0, or the origin. The midpoint is the center of the hyperbola. Let's get to know the different features of the graph of a hyperbola with standard equation of x squared over a squared minus y squared over b squared equals 1. Let c equals the square root of a squared plus b squared. Number 1, the center is at the origin 0, 0. Number 2, the foci, f sub 1 is at negative c0 and f sub 2 is at c0. One is negative, the other is positive. And number 3, the vertices, v sub 1 is at negative a0 and v sub 2 is at a0. Again, one is positive, one is negative. Vertices are points on the hyperbola and collinear with the center and foci. V sub 1, V sub 2 is called transverse axis, that is line segment, and its length is 2a. Another feature of the graph of a hyperbola, number 4, we have the co-vertices or W sub 1 at 0, negative b, and W sub 2 at 0, b. W sub 1, W sub 2, a line segment, is called conjugate axis and its length is 2b. Lastly, number 5, we have the asymptotes. The equations are y equals b over ax and y equals negative b over ax. The lines L sub 1 and L sub 2. The rectangle that you see on the figure is called an auxiliary rectangle. It has sides 2a and 2b with its diagonals intersecting at the center. The auxiliary rectangle helps us to graph the hyperbola. An equation of the hyperbola centered at the origin can be x squared over a squared minus y squared over b squared equals 1. What you can see on the graph are curves opening on opposite sides, one to the left and one to the right. If x is the variable appearing in the first term, that means your graph must be, again, curves opening to the left and to the right. Another form of the equation of a hyperbola, when it's centered at the origin 0, 0, is y squared over a squared minus x squared over b squared equals 1. As you can see, a while ago we had x squared first, this time we have y squared. Unlike the first one, which has the graph opening to the left and right, this time we have two curves opening upward and downward. This can be seen if y is a variable appearing in the first term. Now let's move the center at any point or hk. So we have an equation of the hyperbola centered at hk. So we have the equation, the quantity of x minus h squared over a squared minus the quantity of y minus k squared over b squared equals 1. So again, the graph opens to the left and to the right. The transverse axis is horizontal. Another form of the equation of the hyperbola centered at hk, we have the quantity of y minus k squared over a squared minus the quantity of x minus h squared over b squared equals 1. The curves open upward and downward. The transverse axis is vertical.